The Well Church Mississauga Advent Devotional, Day 19. Gifts of Faith by James Montgomery Boice. Now after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Matthew chapter 2, verse 1 to 2 and 11. In Matthew, we are told that sometime after the birth of Christ, perhaps as much as 2 years after the event, wise men from the east came to worship him. This simple story has always figured largely in most celebrations of Christmas, in this and in other countries, because it is an event upon which the imagination may easily take hold. It has been embellished widely, both in literature and art. From the Bible story, we know very little about the wise men. Millions of Christmas cards show 3 kings presenting gifts to a tiny child in a manger. People sing "We 3 Kings of Orient are," but we do not know that there were 3 wise men who brought the gifts. We are not told that they were kings, or even when they arrived in Bethlehem. It is likely, actually, in view of their long journey and of Herod's command that all children under the 2 years of age be killed, that they arrived when the infant Jesus had already become a young child. The fact that so little information is given about the wise men clearly shows that Matthew's interest was not focused upon the wise men themselves. Rather, he was interested in the fact that Gentiles came to worship the Jewish Messiah, and in the gifts they bore. A literary critic would draw special attention to the gifts, for they occur at the end of the story, after the child had been found, and thus occupy a place of prominence. It is easy to see why gold is an appropriate gift for Jesus Christ. Gold is the metal of kings. When gold was presented to Jesus, it acknowledged his right to rule. It has often been pointed out that when wise men brought gold to the infant Jesus, they were being used by God to provide the funds necessary for Joseph to take the young child and his mother to Egypt to escape Herod's attempt on his life. That is probably true, but although it is true, it is far overshadowed by the significance of the gift itself. Jesus was a king, as the wise men knew. He was a king of kings. The wise men pointed to his kingship with their gold. It is also easy to see why incense was a significant gift. Incense was used in the temple worship. It was mixed with the oil that was used to anoint the priests of Israel. It was part of the meal offerings that were offerings of thanksgiving and praise to God. In presenting this gift, the wise men pointed to Christ as our great high priest, the one whose whole life was acceptable and well-pleasing to his Father. It is interesting that incense was never mixed with sin offerings. The meat and wine offerings were offerings for sin, and those were not to have incense mixed with them. Only the meal offerings, which were not for sin, were to receive the incense. When we discover that, we naturally think of Jesus, to whom incense was given. He was without sin. When his enemies came to him on one occasion, he challenged them with a question, "Can any of you prove me guilty of sin?" They were speechless. Earlier he had said of his Father, "I always do what pleases him." None of us can say that. Since only the Lord Jesus Christ was sinless, it was extremely fitting that incense should have been offered to him. Just as gold speaks of Christ's kingship and incense speaks of the perfection of his life, so does myrrh speak of his death. Myrrh was used in embalming. By any human measure, it would be odd, if not offensive, to present the infant Christ as spice used for embalming. But it was not offensive in this case, nor was it odd. It was a gift of faith. We do not know precisely what the wise men may have known or guessed about Christ's ministry, but we do know that the Old Testament again and again foretold his suffering. Psalm 22 describes his death by crucifixion. It was a verse from this psalm that Jesus quoted when he cried out from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Isaiah 53, 4-5 says, "Surely he took up our infirmities and carried our sorrows. Yet we considered him stricken by God, smitten by him, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. Christ was to suffer, to die for sin. It was myrrh that symbolized this aspect of his ministry. There were a few other uses of myrrh in the ancient world, one of which is particularly important here. In Mark 15:23, we read that when Jesus was crucified, the soldiers who performed the crucifixion offered him wine mixed with myrrh, and that he did not receive it. In John 19:30, we are told that later when some wine was again offered to him, he did receive it. What was the difference? The difference was that in the first case, myrrh, which helped the dead in pain, was mixed with wine. Since Jesus wished to bear all that suffering and death could bring to him, when he had tasted the myrrh, he turned away. Later, in order to fulfill Psalm 69:21, which says, "They gave me vinegar for my thirst," he called for something and drank what was offered. Myrrh was used to deaden pain. Jesus wished to suffer all that accompanied death when he died for us. There is a sense in which, by faith, we too may present our gifts of gold, incense, and myrrh. Begin with your myrrh. Myrrh is not only a symbol of Christ's death, but also of the spiritual death that should come to you for your sin. Lay it at Christ's feet, saying, "Lord Jesus Christ, I know that I am less perfect than you are, and am a sinner. I know that I should receive the consequences of my sin, which is to be barred from your presence forever. But you took my sin, dying in my place. I believe that. Now I ask you to accept me as your child forever." After you had done that, come with your incense, acknowledging that your life is as impure as the life of the Lord Jesus Christ is sinless. The Bible teaches that there is no good in man that is not mixed with evil. But it also teaches that Christ comes to live in the believer, so that the good deeds produced in his or her life may become in their turn a fragrant offering, an acceptable sacrifice pleasing to God. Finally, come with your gold. Gold symbolizes royalty. So when you come with your gold, you acknowledge the right of Christ to rule your life. You say, "I am your servant. You are my master. Direct my life and lead me in it, so that I might grow up spiritually to honor and to serve you accordingly." If you have come believing in all that the myrrh, incense, and gold signify, you have embarked on a path of great spiritual joy and blessing, for those are the gifts of faith. They are the only things we can offer to the one who by grace has given all things to us.